Welcome to the European Association for Higher Education Advancement's YouTube and podcast channel. Today we're going to be diving deep into company culture. We've got this super interesting article from EAEA itself. It's called Why HR Teams Shouldn't Be the Only Ones Focusing on Company Culture. So you ready to unpack this with me?
Absolutely. Company culture is often seen as HR's main thing. But this article kind of challenges that idea. It argues that everyone in an organization kind of plays a part in shaping the culture, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just about beanbag chairs and free snacks.
Hmm.
It's about how we work together. And, this article starts with a statistic that just blew my mind. Employee happiness is more closely tied to relationships with coworkers than with direct supervisors. What do you make of that?
Well, what I think is fascinating there is that it really highlights the power of peer-to-peer influence. Think about your own workplace. Who do you turn to for advice or for a quick laugh or even just to, bounce ideas off of? It's often our colleagues, right? It's those everyday interactions that really shape our experience.
That's so true. And the article makes a really good point. It says that company culture isn't just this fluffy feel-good thing. It impacts everyone in very tangible ways, whether they realize it or not.
Exactly. It's not just about feeling happy at work, though. That's certainly important. It's about creating an environment where people feel valued and supported and motivated. And that directly impacts productivity and creativity and even a company's bottom line. A strong, positive culture can be a huge asset, while a toxic one can really hinder success.
Okay, let's get into some specifics. The article talks about actions that you can take as an individual contributor to shape a positive company culture. And some of these are so simple, but they make a huge difference. Things like striking up conversations during breaks or publicly acknowledging a colleague's great work. I love that idea. Or bringing a positive can-do attitude to meetings.
Yeah, those are the kinds of small actions that build a sense of camaraderie, a sense of mutual respect and support. It's about going beyond just doing your job and actively contributing to a positive and collaborative work environment.
For sure. Now let's talk about managers. This article shared a statistic that was a bit of a wake-up call for me. 3 out of 4 employees who quit their jobs do so because of their bosses. That puts a lot of pressure on managers.
Absolutely. It really highlights the enormous impact that managers have on company culture and employee experience, like their leadership style and their communication and their ability to foster a supportive team dynamic. All of these factors are just crucial. Totally. And here's something I found really interesting. The article argues that managerial transparency is the most significant factor in employee happiness, even more so than a manager's likability or overall competence. Why do you think that is?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think transparency builds trust. Think about it. When managers are open and honest about decisions, and when they explain their reasoning, it makes employees feel like they're in the loop, like they're valued members of the team. It reduces uncertainty and anxiety, and it fosters a sense of ownership and commitment.
Okay, so how can managers put this into practice? The article offers some really concrete advice.
Things like giving regular, honest feedback, both positive and constructive, being open about the reasons behind decisions that affect the team, and even being transparent about career growth opportunities within the company. These are all ways to build trust and create a more positive and engaging work environment. Yeah, it's about treating your team like adults, like valued partners. But transparency is just one piece of the puzzle. How do we get everyone in an organization, from the CEO to the newest hire, focused on building a positive culture? This article has some great ideas for making that happen.
Yeah, one of the most effective strategies the article highlights is leading by example. It's not enough to just talk about values. Leaders need to walk the walk. When people see their managers or even the CEO embodying the behaviors they want to see in the company culture, it sends a powerful message.
Actions speak louder than words. It's about showing, not just telling.
Exactly. And another key point the article makes is the importance of recognizing and rewarding positive behavior. Think about it. When you see a colleague going above and beyond to help out to be a team player and their efforts are acknowledged, it reinforces that behavior. It shows everyone that those actions are valued, and it encourages others to do the same.
Yeah, it creates a ripple effect. And it doesn't have to be some big formal reward system. A simple thank you note or a shout out in a meeting or even just a sincere "I appreciate that" can go a long way.
Absolutely. It's about creating a feedback loop that reinforces the culture you want to build. And here's where it gets really interesting. The article emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to company culture. What works for one organization might not work for another. Each company has its own unique personality, its own set of values and goals.
So it's not about trying to copy someone else's culture. It's about figuring out what works best for your team, for your specific environment.
Right. And that's where the real work comes in. It's about asking those tough questions, like what kind of culture do we want to create? What are the values and behaviors that are most important to us? Once you have that clear vision, then you can start thinking about specific strategies to make it a reality.
So it's like having a roadmap, a destination in mind. But how do you actually get everyone on board and moving in the same direction?
Well, that's where things like clear communication and training programs and even team building exercises can be really helpful. It's about equipping people with the tools and knowledge they need to embody the desired culture. And it's about creating opportunities for them to practice those behaviors and receive feedback.
So it sounds like an ongoing process, a continuous journey rather than a one-time fix.
Exactly. Building a strong company culture isn't a destination, it's a journey. It requires ongoing attention, feedback, and adjustments along the way. And it requires buy-in from everyone at every level of the organization.
It's a collaborative effort, not just something that HR dictates from the top down.
Absolutely. And remember, company culture is constantly evolving. It's shaped by the actions and interactions of everyone in the organization every single day.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the surprising power of peer relationships to the importance of managerial transparency and the need for tailored strategies. But as we wrap up, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important message is this. You have the power to positively impact your workplace culture no matter what your role is. Even small actions can make a difference. Being mindful of your communication, offering help to a colleague, bringing a positive attitude, these seemingly small things add up.
It's about taking ownership and being part of the solution rather than waiting for someone else to fix it. And as we close out this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this final thought. What one small action can you take today to contribute to a more positive and thriving culture in your workplace? Think about it. It might be easier than you think.
Yeah, it really is about recognizing that, we all have a role to play in shaping the culture around us. And this article makes a point that I think is really powerful. When we focus on building a positive company culture, we're ultimately focusing on improving the happiness and well-being of ourselves and the people we work with.
Yeah, it's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive, both personally and professionally.
Exactly. When people feel valued and respected and supported, they're more likely to be engaged and productive and creative. And that benefits everyone, not just the individuals, but the organization as a whole.
So it's a win-win. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to hear your final thoughts. What's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I'd say it's this. Take a moment to reflect on what you, in your specific role, can do to positively impact your workplace culture.
Well,
It doesn't have to be some grand gesture. Even small actions can make a difference, whether it's being more mindful of your communication or offering a helping hand to a colleague or simply bringing a positive attitude to work each day. Every little bit counts.
that's such a great point. It's not about waiting for someone else to fix the culture. It's about taking ownership and being part of the solution.
And remember, culture is constantly evolving. It's something we all create together day by day.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into company culture. It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you, and I hope our listeners feel inspired to take action.
It's been my pleasure.
Please don't forget to follow the European Association for Higher Education Advancement on YouTube and social media.
It really is about recognizing that we all, have a role to play in shaping the culture around us. And this article makes a point that I think is really powerful. When we focus on building a positive company culture, we're ultimately focusing on improving the happiness and well-being of ourselves and the people we work with.
Right. It's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive.
Yeah.
Both personally and professionally.
Exactly. When people feel valued and respected and supported, they're more likely to be engaged, productive, and creative. And that benefits everyone, not just the individuals, but the organization as a whole.
It's a win-win for sure. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the surprising power of those peer relationships to the importance of managerial transparency, and of course, the need for those tailored strategies. But as we wrap up our deep dive today, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I'd say it's this. Take a moment to reflect on what you, in your specific role, can do to positively impact your workplace culture. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture or anything. Even small actions can make a difference. Whether it's being more mindful of your communication, offering a helping hand to a colleague, or simply bringing a positive attitude to work each day. Every little bit counts.
It's so true. It's not about waiting for someone else to come in and fix the culture. It's about taking ownership and being part of the solution.
And remember, culture is constantly evolving. It's something we all create together day by day.
That's a great point. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into company culture. It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you, and I hope our listeners feel inspired to take action.
It's been my pleasure.
Please don't forget to follow the European Association for Higher Education Advancement on YouTube and social media.